At one point, a lot of people were intrigued with the idea that Ellen could run for president one day. Fast forward to the time of this recording, and it seems she would be one of the least liked presidents in recent history, well, depending who you ask, I guess. Unlike other talk show hosts and celebrities, Ellen has shied away from talking politics, especially on her show. Although she did have presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, former President Barack Obama, and presidential candidate John McCain on her show at one point. There was also the time she was seen sitting beside former President George W. Bush and faced a huge amount of backlash while attending a Dallas Cowboys game in the owner's suite. And in the past, she's been vocal about some of her beliefs, especially after defending herself for sitting beside Bush. So if Ellen were to run and win the nomination of President of the United States, what would happen? Today on Life's Biggest Questions, we're asking, what if Ellen was the next president? What's going on, guys? Welcome back to LBQ. I'm your host for this one, Jared Bronstein, and today we're talking about everyone's favorite daytime talk show host, Ellen DeGeneres. For similar videos to this one, check out the playlist that just popped up and make sure to stick around to the end of this one for some common replies from another video, but for now, let's get right into it. Although Ellen has never really outright stated she's Democratic, I strongly feel that is where her allegiance lies. Given her stance on same-sex marriage, in which she challenged John McCain about back in 2008, as well as her thoughts on President Trump, I think it's a safe bet. She lives in a blue state in California, even though that is where the studio she films is at. Realistically, she has the power to get a studio anywhere she wants. But even her relationship with both Barack and Michelle Obama and the Clintons just give me more reason to believe she's a Democratic-minded person, and that would obviously make her the leader of the Democratic Party. This would mean that instead of Sleepy Joe, as some call him, Ellen DeGeneres would be going up against Big Bad Donny Boy. I will say the internet would have a field day, as both Ellen and Trump have had their fair share of memes, jokes, and overall hate sent their way. And although it would be a crazy campaign for both sides, if somehow Ellen were to win it all, you could be sure there would be a lot of unhappy Americans. She'd be making history as not only the first female president, but the first openly gay president as well. This would be a huge milestone in American history and would hopefully lead to a huge shift in the way the entire world treats both women and those a part of the LGBTQ+ community. I'd like to think that one of Ellen's main pillars of her campaign would be creating a safer space for the LGBTQ+ community and allowing for equal opportunity for all. But it would be bigger than just the United States of America. She'd likely be seen as a world ambassador for these rights and will continue pushing at world events with other leaders. Her stance on the community is likely the most obvious, given that she married her longtime girlfriend Portia de Rossi in 2008. Shortly after California made same-sex marriage legal, it wouldn't be much of a shock for her to base a large part of her campaign around exactly that, equal rights for all. But when it comes to things such as immigration, the economy, and healthcare, we gotta do some assuming, as Ellen has never outright said, I think the top 1% should be taxed more, or we need universal healthcare. She has spoken about certain policies she doesn't like or disagrees with, and as a whole, it seems she's pretty much the total opposite of President Donald Trump. This is evident based on what she said while speaking with Matt Lauer on her show. When asked why she wouldn't invite President Trump on her talk show, Ellen responded, I quote, "Because I'm not going to change his mind. He's against everything that I stand for. We need to look at someone else who looks different than us and believes in something that we don't believe in and still accept them and still let them have their rights. He's against everything I stand for." Those were her words. So inevitably, we need to look at everything Trump stands for and just assume Ellen stands for the opposite. In another interview while Megyn Kelly was on her show, Ellen explained again why she wouldn't invite Trump to her show, saying, "There is nothing I'm going to say to him that's going to change him, and I don't want to give him a platform because it validates him. For me to have someone on the show, I have to at least admire them in some way, and I can't have someone that I feel is not only dangerous for the country, and for me personally as a gay woman, but to the world. He's dividing all of us. I just don't want him on the show." So no surprise regarding immigration, Ellen would likely be much more willing to allow those from other countries to immigrate to the United States, something President Trump based his campaign against. Now that doesn't mean Trump doesn't allow any immigration, but his stance to reduce illegal immigration, the ban on immigration from numerous majority Muslim countries, and his zero-tolerance policy which separated children from their families at the US-Mexico border are just a few of the things Ellen would be polar opposite on. When the White House was screening Finding Dory, in which Ellen stars, she decided to comment on the film as well as the Trump administration Muslim ban, as it was referred to. Over the weekend on Friday, the president gave an order banning people from 7 countries from entering the United States, including people with green cards. And then on Saturday, the president screened Finding Dory at the White House. I don't get political, but I will say that I am against one of those two things. Like I said, I don't get political, so I'm not going to talk about the travel ban. I'm just going to talk about the very non-political, family-friendly, People's Choice Award-winning Finding Dory. Dory lives in Australia, and these are her parents, and they live in America. And I don't know what religion they are, but her dad sounds a little Jewish. It doesn't matter. Dory arrives in America with her friends Marlin and Nemo. She ends up at the Marine Life Institute behind a large wall. They all have to get over the wall, and you won't believe it, but that wall has almost no effect in keeping them out. Even though Dory gets into America, she ends up separated from her family, but the other animals help Dory. Animals that don't even need her. Animals that don't even have anything in common with her. They help her even though they're completely different colors, because that's what you do when you see someone in need. you help them. Clearly Ellen was referring to people seeking asylum in the United States, and even people who legally should be allowed to immigrate to the US. When it comes to world policies, or at least how she would interact with other world leaders, it seems Ellen would be very stern on certain beliefs, which in this case would only benefit the world as a whole. While speaking about the boycott of hotels owned by the Sultan of Brunei, which was in response to the persecution of LGBTQ+ people in his country, Ellen chimed in saying, "It's a frightening thing that just being yourself is illegal in certain countries and that you could get killed for it. It makes me sad for all the people that live in those countries. It makes me sad that other people have those opinions about myself, that there's something wrong with me just because I love someone. So we need to have voices and make decisions to not support hotels and places like that." Although she may not necessarily be able to change the mind of other world leaders regarding things such as gay rights, it would certainly be a huge step in the right direction to have an openly gay, pro-LGBTQ+ community-minded leader running one of the biggest and most powerful countries in the world. And hopefully it would start a ripple effect that would push for equal rights worldwide. When it comes to things like the economy, healthcare, and even military, to no surprise, Ellen hasn't spoken much about these things. But she has shown support for veterans in the past, reunited family members on her show, and inviting other former or current members of the military to speak while on her show. And although she said she's against everything Trump stands for, I think she meant that surface level. If she were to actually win the presidency, I genuinely think she would focus on the country's economy, maybe not as prominently as Trump does, but she would likely still want to grow from the inside out. The thing with Ellen is that it appears even if she disagrees with someone's beliefs, she's still willing to accept them. When she was caught sitting with George W. Bush, who people have called a war criminal in the past, she was quick to defend the relationship. I quote, "For instance, I wish people wouldn't wear fur. I don't like it, but I'm friends with people who wear fur. Just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people that think the same way you do. I mean be kind to everyone. Doesn't matter." If she does genuinely believe in what she is saying, then it does lead me to believe that we'd possibly have one of the most neutral presidents in history if Ellen were to become the next president of the United States. Almost every politician tries to be relatable in hopes that they get elected. They want people to think of them as a friend, not a leader. A working class, for the people kind of president. But the truth is, these politicians just say what they need to say in hopes of getting in people's good graces. The reason why President Trump has become so popular among those that do support him is that they feel he speaks his mind, regardless of how people will perceive him. For some, that's a great trait, while for others, at least when you're the leader of a country, you need to be a little more level-headed. This leads me to believe that regardless of what Ellen believes in, she'd always be willing to listen to the people and at the very least have a conversation. Now this could be a good or a bad thing. For some, the idea of a president who is willing to listen to both sides and then make a decision could potentially lead to the most neutral president of all time, and everyone feeling that, I guess, their voice is heard. For others, it would likely be seen as a president who is just trying to appease the masses. But at the end of the day, as I said before, it seems that's what politicians do. They want the masses to be on their side so they get the vote and win whatever election it is they're campaigning for. So if Ellen were to become the next president, well, it's tough to fully determine how things would play out. One thing is for sure, history would be made, and there would likely be a push from her to other countries regarding equal rights for all. It's been a while since the country has had a leader that put human rights on the forefront of their campaign, but it seems if Ellen were to not only run, but win the presidency, she would be doing just that. And honestly, it's not such a bad idea. But still, I don't know if I want someone who is quite literally a celebrity and an entertainer running the country. I mean, at the very least, I'd want them to have some sort of history or experience in politics, not someone who thinks they know what they're doing. And that does it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. How would you feel if Ellen became the next president of the United States? For now, let's reply to some comments from the video, what if World War I never happened? Alejandro Rivera said, what if Donald Trump was a Democrat? I think that would actually be a very interesting video. He's obviously very business-minded, and I mean, he's a businessman, so it makes sense. You know, they say the economy in the States has never been as good, so it makes sense because he knows business. But again, the Democrats, I mean, they're complete opposite of what he is because he's a Republican, obviously. So it'd be very interesting to see, I guess, how his beliefs would align with the Democrats, even though it appears he is very Republican-minded because, like I said, he is Republican, obviously. So Leader Lemon said, even if bad things happened, we should never change anything because it could extremely hurt the current timeline. That's what I always say about the butterfly effect. You change one thing, everything else changes. So the videos about like alternate history with like the wars or even the Titanic, I always say like, who knows for sure what would happen, but I can tell you right now, life would definitely not be the same. Tony Yaman said, who would be involved in World War III? I feel like we might have done a video about that, but odds are like the superpowers, I would say, like probably the US, Russia, China, and then whichever other countries have allegiance where. I mean, obviously, like, you know, I'm sure like the UK would get involved and like Canada, but maybe not, I don't know. But I would say probably like the US, Russia, China, they'd be like probably the three of them. For sure. I don't know who would go against who or who would, you know, be with who, but something like that. And that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this video, click the playlist right over here, guys. We got some similar videos that you guys are going to enjoy. That's all for this one, guys. I've been your host, Jared Bronstein. You've been watching LBQ, and we'll see you in the next one.